Hey Metalheads, it's Preston bringing another tutorial video today. Today we're going to show you how to paint elf skin tones. We're going to be doing this on these Kurnothi models from the Beastgrave set from Games Workshop. Here's one of the models we've already finished so you can kind of see the end result. These are nice bright Caucasian flesh tones with a hint of pink in the mid-tone areas and a little bit of yellow in the highlight areas to make them nice and bright and elfy. And so in today's video, we're going to show you how to accomplish this technique. We're going to be starting off with this female archer model. We've already applied some of our first step here. Actually, we're going to start like this. Alright guys, so the colors I'm using today, we're going to start off with P3's Cardic Flesh as our base coat on the skin. We're going to glaze this on with the airbrush. Second, we're going to come in with the Ren Flesh from P3. This is a much brighter skin tone. We're going to glaze this from a downwards angle from above onto the skin. Then we're going to come back in with some Flesh Wash from Army Painter and do a targeted application of this wash to kind of blend these two previous colors together a bit. And at this stage, we're going to come in with our brush and highlight the skin up by brush even more than it is already by airbrush. After that, we're going to come in with some Squid Pink from Vallejo Game Air, this nice vibrant pink color. We're going to be lightly glazing this into the midtones. And then finally, we're going to come in with Lamenter's Yellow from Citadel. We're going to be glazing this into the highlight areas to give us a nice yellow tint into those spots. So these are the colors I'm using. You can use your own color choices as long as they kind of match these similar tones and hues. You should be able to replicate our techniques here. Alright, so I've already applied a bit of the Cardic Flesh by the airbrush into the shadow areas, but we're going to keep on going here. We've got it loaded up into my airbrush. So I'm just looking for all those darker areas, the skin and the recess, but I'm also applying this as like an overall glaze onto all these areas. I'm just saturating it more in the shadowy regions. At this stage, it's alright if we get a little bit of overspray onto the leathers and stuff like that, because we haven't painted those yet. We're going to be coming back in later. But we do want to be careful around all of the thatchwork armor that we've already painted here. Get our hands there. A little bit carried away there, but it's fine. Slightly building up these glazes. Alright, so that's the first step there. It's pretty good. We've got a nice overall coverage of this Cardic Flesh from P3 glazed on our skin tone regions. Alright guys, so next I'm going to load up my Ren Flesh from P3 into the airbrush. We just need a very little bit of this. Like I said, we're adding quite a bit of thinner to this, about a 2-to-1 ratio of paint and thinner. So we've got a nice thin glaze to work with here. So we really don't need a whole lot of paint, just a little bit of thinner there. Make sure it's nice and well mixed up. Alright, so with the last step where we did an overall application of the glaze, with this one we're going to be much more targeted. We're going to try to come in from a downwards angle to simulate the natural light source. And we're going to apply this skin tone here as a highlight. Running for the tops of all the shapes of the skin here. I'll do a little bit more on her ribs there. Cool. That's step 2. Skin's starting to take shape now that we've got 2 different tones on there. Starting to get those highlights. Alright guys, so that concludes the airbrushing for the skin here. We just got our basic skin tones on there. I like to use the airbrush for my skin tones when I can get away with it, just to get that really nice smooth blend going on. Don't want any brush strokes on our skin, especially with elf skin. Alright guys, so I'm going to put some of this flesh wash on my palette here. And we don't want to go too heavy with this. In fact, we're going to add a little bit of water to our wash here to tone it down a little bit, so it's not too super thick. And then we're just going to come in here and delicately apply this wash into all the recessed areas. So like her eye socket, around the neck here, wherever the skin is meeting the armor. Those are going to be key spots for this. But we don't want to put this wash into our highlight areas. We want to keep those nice and bright. We don't want to muddy those up with a wash or tone them down any. We want to keep them nice and bright. So we'll apply some of this wash into the area where the hair meets the skin. I'm going to use this wash to help separate the skin from the surrounding materials, and also tone the skin down a bit in those shadowy areas. So like around the fingers is a perfect spot to put the wash there. Just in between the digits of the fingers, help separate those shapes out a bit more. Add some more contrast in there. Go. Alright, we're gonna give this wash a few minutes to dry before we continue on to the next step. Alright guys, now that we've let the wash dry for a few minutes, we'll continue on with the skin tones. I'm gonna get both of my flesh tone colors that I used in the previous airbrushing steps onto my palette here. This is the Cardic Flesh and the Red Flesh from P3. So I'm just gonna load a little bit of this onto my palette. Cardic Flesh. Some of the Red Flesh here. Don't need a whole lot. Alright, so I'm going to take the Red Flesh and mix it with the Cardic Flesh on my palette to get kind of the halfway point between the two colors here. You guys can see. I'm gonna add a bit of water to it, so it's a nice glaze consistency here. I like to, as you guys can see, I like to whisk off the extra paint from this glaze onto my wrist here, just so we have a bit more control over it. It's not all flowing off the brush and getting carried away on us. And so now we'll take our mixture of these two colors and start highlighting the skin up, focusing towards those mid-tone areas and the tops of the shapes that make up the skin on the model here. starting with a mixture between the two tones here, because going straight to the Ren flesh would be a bit too abrupt of a highlight. So we go through here, start applying these highlights, this glaze here to the skin. Just bringing up that contrast, focusing these highlights on the areas that are going to be hit by that natural light source the most. And it's a glaze, so I'm always kind of move my brush strokes in such a way that I'm bringing up the brush in the area of the shape where I want the highlight to be more prominent, more bright. It's also glazed, so it's translucent. It's gonna kind of play with the tones that are underneath it, the tones we established by airbrush. You can also kind of keep building up these layers of glaze. The more layers we apply, the brighter it will appear. These fingers here. And so the more of these layers of glaze that we apply to specific spots, the brighter those areas are going to appear as the paint becomes more saturated there. Going through and just do a couple of passes here with this. Right. Now we'll take the Ren flesh, mix it into our mixture here. We'll go more bright with more of the Ren flesh here. Still same kind of thing. We're going to thin it down to a nice translucent glaze. We're going to get most of it off the brush. And now we'll come in and start applying this highlight, this brighter highlight now. So even more of a targeted area towards the tops of the shapes. It's important to, when we're doing these skin tones, to always keep our paint nice and thin and glaze consistency. It's because the texture of the skin is very smooth, so we don't really want very many brush strokes to be apparent here. It's also why we kind of started with that more of a mid-tone mixture, and now we're doing more of the intense highlight here. But same process as the last kind of step. It's a nice thin glaze, so we kind of work it in multiple coats, brighten that skin up to where we want it. Alright guys, so now that we've got our highlights applied to the skin tones, we're going to start adjusting the temperature. I'm using this squid pink from WhiteMetalGames, and we just need a very little small bit of this. Just gonna dot it onto the palette there, because we're gonna be thinning this down a lot, like a whole lot, even more than the previous steps. Just gonna get a little bit of paint there, and then just like flood it with water, basically. It's super, super thin and translucent. Because we're just using this to adjust the temperature. This is going to tint things to be more of a pinkish tone. So I'm going to apply this to areas like the cheeks here, lip. Pretty much in the mid-tone areas where our highlights and our shadows kind of meet. We're going to introduce this pink tone very subtly. The idea is to keep it subtle. We don't want the skin to turn pink on us. We just want to put a little bit of pink in the skin in those areas. A little bit more pigment here. Alright guys, it's looking pretty good here. And these last two steps with the pink and the yellow, they're not entirely necessary. You can skip these steps and have a tabletop ready model good to go. We're just adding a little bit of extra temperature and color in the skin just to make it a little bit more interesting. So as the final step here, we're going to take this Lamenter's Yellow onto our palette. And this is already pretty thin glaze, so we don't really need to add much to this. We are going to thin it down with just a little bit of water though, just to make it a little bit less intense. Whisk off some of the extra on my wrist. And then we'll just glaze this yellow up just in the very tops of the shapes, like the forehead, the shoulder, hand here. Just to give a hint of yellow in those areas. And as we do this, you guys see that the skin starts looking pretty realistic for us. And then after this, we just go in and paint the eyes and the eyebrows, and we'll be done. But that's how you get your basic elf skin tones there. So hope you guys enjoyed the video today, guys. Stay tuned. We've got more great tutorial videos down the pipes for you guys. Until next time, been Preston with WhiteMetalGames. See you later.